The Senate Committee on Transportation Infrastructure will come to order. Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll, please.
Chairman Barrett.
Here.
Senator Lasada. Senator McBroom. Senator Victory. Here. Senator Outman. Here. Senator Lowers. Here. Senator Geis.
Present.
Senator Bullock.
Present.
Senator Ollier.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, there are 8 members present. There is a quorum.
Very good. I will make a motion to excuse any absent members should that become necessary, but I would like to leave open the opportunity for their attendance to be recorded should they arrive. Seeing no objection, they are excused. We also need a motion to adopt our committee meetings from the March 13th meeting we had here in this room. Senator Outman so moves. Seeing no objection, those are approved. Next, I'd like to take up Senate Bill 129. This bill has been introduced by Senator Schmidt regarding unmanned aircraft in a particular part of our state. And I know we have some folks here to testify on behalf of Senator Schmidt. Craig Puckett is here, as well as Dennis Cawthorn, I think, coming up together. Is that correct? Go ahead, gentlemen, whenever you're ready. Appreciate you coming today.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman and committee members, for taking up this bill. My name is Craig Puckett. I'm with Senator Wayne Schmidt's office. He apologized he's not able to attend today. But Senate Bill 129 would allow Mackinac Island to regulate and enforce the use of drones. This bill originated from the Unmanned Aircraft Systems Task Force report that specifically mentioned Mackinac Island in one of their 13 recommendations as being a unique location to allow more specific regulations. In addition to that report, we have also heard from the people of Mackinac Island who have strong concerns of an incident, of a possible incident involving a drone and one of the horses that are in a congested area on the island. I have Dennis Cawthorn here to go into more detail about that.
Thank you. And I'm here as a private citizen at the request of the mayor of Mackinac Island and at the request of the Mackinac Island Convention and Visitors Bureau. I am a former legislator and for over 20 years served as chairman of the Mackinac Island State Park Commission by appointment of both Governors Engler and Granholm. And I am one of the 3 members of the Mackinac Island Convention and Visitors Bureau Board, have several businesses on the island, and since leaving the legislature 40 years ago, have been a registered voter on Mackinac Island, thus a constituent of Senator Schmidt. This issue was brought to the attention of the city last year when we had several serious incidents and near misses involving drones operating on the island. And of course, as you know, from having been there, most of you, many times, the island is a special place which bans automobiles, which has approximately 600 horses and about 200 horse-drawn vehicles and nearly 1 million people a year visiting us. The problem is that drones have a tendency to spook horses, and when horses are spooked, they tend to run away, and when they run away, there can be catastrophic results. So the city of Mackinac Island became very concerned when drones began to appear over the skies or in the skies, and as a result contacted Senator Schmidt and asked him to support an effort to somehow carve out, I guess, basically an exception for Mackinac Island. A much broader version of the bill before you was considered by the Senate last year and passed on a 31-4 vote. There were some issues after the passage of the bill that caused us to try to, work and reach out to some technology companies and to some other businesses that were concerned about the bill. And as a result, there were negotiations and various concessions were made. And to the best of my knowledge, the various interested parties came to a general consensus, the result being this bill that's before you today. The bill actually is an interim fix to the problem, because what it basically does is to require the city of Mackinac Island to seek a fixed site exemption from the FAA to allow the city to continue its regulation. In other words, the city would have to apply within 12 months of the passage of this legislation. You'd have 12 months to apply to the FAA for an exemption. And then, depending on the outcome of that, hopefully the exemption would be granted, the city would be able to go forward with continued regulation. Well, as you know, the tourist season, thank goodness, is rapidly approaching, and therefore the problem is rapidly becoming more important and more timely. So it is our hope that you will today support Senate Bill 129 and move it along so that when you arrive for the Mackinac Policy Conference, as many of you will, that you'll be safe and not be victimized by a spooked runaway team of horses. So we hope you'll support the bill, and we thank you for your time and your attention, and I'd be glad to take any questions.
Thank you. Any committee members with questions? All right. Thank you both. Appreciate it. I wanted to just make mention to committee, we do have a substitute that's been offered. The only change to that was that on page 2 of the substitute, this is the S1 for this bill, it added in an insurance company or adjuster for insurance purposes on line 1. That was done out of requests for other, I guess, non-hobbyist types of drone use that would be an appropriate use. So we added that in. There are other exemptions in this bill already for a public utility and others for their particular purposes as well. So we wanted to account for those without unduly adding a lot of drone activity up on the island in a way that would be a nuisance. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the S1 version of Senate Bill 129. Vice Chair Lasada so moves. Madam Clerk, if you could.
Chairman Barrett?
Yes.
Senator Lasada? Yes. Senator McBroom? Yes. Senator Victory? Yes. Senator Outman? Yes. Senator Lowers? Yes. Senator Geis?
Yes.
Senator Bullock?
Yes.
Senator Ollier?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, there are 9 yeas and 0 nays. The substitute is adopted.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We do have a few other cards. One supporting, not wishing to speak, David Gregory from Kelly Cawthorn on behalf of the Mackinac Island Carriage Tours. And then Mark Polsdorfer from MDOT is neutral, not wishing to speak. And then lastly, we have in opposition wishing to speak, Jason Gilman here on behalf of himself, who wanted to speak as well. So come on up, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just don't drone on.
My name is Jason. My name is Jason Gilman. Again, I'm representing myself. I am a Part 107 certificate holder, even though I've never actually flown under authority of that particular certificate. Most of my flying is fixed-wing aircraft. However,
Do you want to tell people what a Part 107 is?
Part 107 certificate is basically the FAA drone license, if you will. So basically, if you want to do commercial operations using drones, that's the license that you have to have. It's not as stringent as, say, a certificate under Part 61, a regular pilot. However, there are a lot of, in some ways, there are similarities. So, drug, alcohol, can't be, doing that while you're flying the drones. And there are a lot of regulations that fall under 107. And actually, the issue was brought up, when I first heard about this, I was wondering why. Well, it was explained, the concern seems to be horses, spooking the horses and, in a condensed area. All right, I can see that. As it is, however, Part 107-23 already addresses hazardous operations. Now, it doesn't obviously say, you can't spook horses. However, I would say hazardous operations fall into that. So for example, if a 107 certificate holder were to, spook a horse due to negligence or, just whatever reason without taking due concern, I would say that would fall under Part 107, and, if the island wanted to, they could take it up with the FAA and basically have a certificate action, looked into. The other thing that I found interesting was the fixed site designation. I guess I'm curious as to why they need that, because that's usually used for, and actually from the legislation, from the public law, critical infrastructure, oil refineries, amusement parks, and other locations that weren't such restrictions. I'm presuming, other locations that weren't such restrictions is what they're going for. But I'm just curious why, the legislation is looking to require that as compared to just going this route. The only thing I can think of is, and here's another thing, consulting with a friend of mine who's an aviation attorney, we basically think that if someone wanted to, there's nothing that would prevent someone from parking their boat off the shore of the island and basically flying their drone overhead, because at that point, the FAA would have control of the airspace, especially for someone who is a Part 107 certificate holder as compared to a Part 101 hobbyist, for example. I think that's all I have. And then I guess the other thing is, as it is under 20MAR19, there's an airport on the island. People can fly fixed-wing aircraft as it is, 500,000 feet above the ground. So
Not 500,000 feet, 500 or 1,000.
500 or 1,000
Okay.
feet, depending on, you're right, correct,
Yeah.
sir. Based on, basically the density of things. So that seems to not be an issue. I mean, I've flown to the island myself and didn't hear any reports of, horses being scared or whatever. So I'm just, in general, I oppose the bill on a matter of principle, and I don't think there's really going to be much of an issue. Like I said, for 107 certificate holders, there's already things in place like 107.23 for hazardous operations if they do cause an issue. And then just other technical stuff. For example, it mentions, one of the exemptions, FCC licensed news gatherer. I can find no such license, when I was searching for that. So I'm not sure how that came up. And then in terms of the time frame for applying for the fixed site designation, I would say that would actually happen immediately if this bill were to pass, because as the legislation states, not later than 12 months after the effective date of the rules and regulations promulgated by the United States Federal Aviation Administration. That time is coming past as of January 2018 is when that 12-month mark would have been hit. So that's all I have. If there are any questions, I'd be pleased to happy to answer them, Mr. Chair.
All right. Would you speculate that most of the people who would use a drone on Mackinac Island would be unlicensed hobbyists?
That I'm not sure. I would imagine there would be a lot of 107 certificate holders, because in order to conduct commercial operations with drones, you do have to have a 107 certificate or a Section 333 waiver. So for example, photographers, stuff like that, I would argue most of those guys would be. And then even for, the family that's there or whatever, they're probably, they might have a drone or whatever, but I would imagine they'd be using it in areas that aren't as much of a concern. But obviously, I can't, speak to that 100%.
Okay. And I think a lot of the concern is around the unlicensed hobbyist who doesn't really
Right.
have an awareness around it.
And actually, I wasn't sure if I wanted to bring this up, but under Part 101, for the hobbyist stuff, what's the size of the island, Mr. Chair? Do you happen to know? Because essentially, flying within 5 miles of an airport, they would have to notify the airport manager. So anyway, within 5 miles of the field, they would have to notify the airport manager. And then if the airport manager were to say that's unsafe, the FAA has found previously that would constitute hazardous operations and would therefore be illegal.
Yeah, and again, I just think that people aren't familiar with the FAA regulations relative to a hobby drone, to where they're flying 50 feet off the ground or less. They're not interfering with aircraft, but they could create a nuisance to, people on the ground as well as the horses and everything else. I think that's what the predominant intent behind the bill is. But Senator McBroom had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sir, thanks for your testimony. You read through the bill?
Yes, sir.
So, I guess, I don't know if you can answer this question, if somebody else can, but what authority does the state have to regulate airspace?
That's the thing I'm not 100% sure on. Like I said, I could certainly get back with you. Associate of mine, he does aviation law. And we're talking about this, and from what we can tell, he's obviously more knowledgeable than I. Essentially, the actual airspace would be preempted, and the only thing that the island would be able to do, should this pass, would essentially be able to prohibit launches and essentially the transport of the actual drone, on the ground.
From your reading, do you think it's possible to modify the bill in such a way that would allow usage of drones in places that aren't part of the park and the tours and, because there's private residents who live on the island,
So, yeah, there's that issue too, obviously. Again, it's been a while since I visited the island. I'm not sure how many residents, I'm certainly not an expert on the island. I would have to look at it further. I would have to do more research in regards to that. I'm just, I just looked at the bill, seemed to be, and it just, again, in principle, opposed to it. And then, obviously, there are technical deficiencies that pop out to me anyway, so.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr.
But
Chairman.
if you would like, I could give you my business card afterwards, and we can discuss further, so.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other committee members with questions? All right, with that, I will take a motion to report Senate Bill 129, S1 substitute. Senator Victory so moves. Madam Clerk, if you could.
Chairman Barrett?
Yes.
Senator Lasada? Senator McBroom? Senator Victory? Senator Outman? Senator Lowers? Senator Geis? Senator Bullock? Senator Ollier? Mr. Chairman, there are 9 yeas and 0 nays. The bill is reported.
Very good, and I will move for immediate effect. Seeing no objection for immediate effect for this bill, immediate effect is recommended. With that, I see no further business before this committee. Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.